All right, let's talk about something. There's this idea floating around, this myth, really, that PL/SQL is, well, that it's this ancient relic. Today, we're going to bust that myth wide open. I'm going to show you how modern PL/SQL isn't just hanging on. It's an absolute powerhouse for building today's high-performance apps.
Okay, so let's just get right to it. The elephant in the room. In this age of microservices and cloud-native everything, are database stored procedures dead? I mean, the common wisdom, what everyone seems to say is yes, all your business logic should be in the middle tier, right? But is that always the best way to do things?
This quote right here, it just nails the problem. Seriously, think about it for a second. Pulling millions of rows of data out of your database, shipping it across a network, all just to process it somewhere else in a middle tier. That is a recipe for a slow, clunky application. It just doesn't make sense. The real power of PLSQL is that it lets you work on the data right where it lives. You get to completely cut out that network bottleneck.
So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to look at how PLSQL isn't dead, how to speed things up, how to handle JSON, deploy without any downtime, and even run JavaScript inside the database to totally transform your backend. Let's get into it. Okay, first up, let's talk about making things fast. We are going to find and fix the single biggest, most common performance killer that I see in database code all the time. It's time to stop looping and, well, start flying. So the problem, the big bad guy here, is something called a context switch. Every time you run a simple for loop, you're forcing the database to switch back and forth between the PLSQL engine and the SQL engine for every single row. So if you've got 10,000 rows to process, that's 10,000 slow, painful, inefficient switches. It's like driving on a highway and having to stop and pay a toll every 100 feet. It just absolutely murders your performance.
And just look at this. The difference is night and day. On the left, you see the old way, that slow, row-by-row for loop, our performance villain. And on the right, that's the modern way. It's clean, it's simple, and it takes what could be thousands of tiny, slow operations and turns them into just two super efficient ones. We're talking a 10x, sometimes even a 100x performance boost. It's huge.
So what's the magic trick here? It's two things: bulk collect and for all. Think of bulk collect like a giant vacuum cleaner. Whoosh! It sucks all the data you need from your query into memory all at once. Then, after you've done your work, for all is like a cannon that blasts all of that data back to the database in one single shot. One trip out, one trip back. That's it. The speed you get from this it's just a total game changer.
Okay, so we've made our code lightning fast. Now, let's talk about data. Specifically, let's talk about JSON. It's pretty much the language of every modern API out there, right? And it's time we stopped building it the clumsy, old-school way.
Come on, you know you've done this. I've done this. We've all been there. You need to create a JSON document. So what do? You start mashing strings together with pipes and commas. It's messy. It's so easy to miss a comma or a quote. And worst of all, it opens up this huge, gaping security hole for SQL injection. There is a much better way.
And this is it. This is the modern way. Instead of Frankensteining a string together, you create an actual native JSON object. You just use simple methods like .put to add a key value pair. And if you've ever worked with JSON in JavaScript or Python, this is going to feel completely natural right out of the box.
So the fix is just stop doing it manually. Use the built-in object types the database gives you, like JSON_object_t and JSON_array_t. When you do that, you let the database worry about all the tricky formatting, the escaping, everything. And what you get is code that's not only cleaner and easier to read, but it's secure by default.
All right, next up, let's talk about one of the biggest pains for any dev team: deployments. You know what I'm talking about. Those late night or weekend maintenance windows. Well, this next pattern, this is how you can finally say goodbye to all that.
So here's the classic problem, right? You've got to deploy a new version of a PLSQL package, but the app is live, thousands of users are on it. If you go and recompile that code, boom. You risk crashing a bunch of user sessions with that dreaded error, that package state has been discarded message. And that right there, that's the reason we all end up doing deployments at 2 a.m. on a Saturday.
So the solution is this incredible built-in feature called Edition-Based Redefinition, or EBR for short. And what it does is pretty amazing. It lets you have 2 or even more versions of your code living in the database at the exact same time.
Now, you might be thinking of a blue-green deployment, but that usually means duplicating your entire server stack. EBR does it all right inside the database, which is way more efficient.
So here's how it works, step by step. First, your current code, we'll call it version 1, is live, happily serving all your users. Then your CI/CD pipeline comes along and deploys version 2 into a special hidden edition. It's there, but nobody sees it yet. Once that's all compiled and tested, a DBA, or an automated process, flips a single switch, and instantly all new people connecting to the app are directed to version 2. But the cool part? Anyone who was already using version 1 just finishes their session completely uninterrupted. It's seamless, no errors, zero downtime.
Okay, so our deployments are now totally seamless. That's awesome. Now let's talk about making development itself more flexible. I mean, what if you could take the raw data crunching power of PLSQL and mash it up with the huge, powerful ecosystem of JavaScript? Let's see how you can get the best of both worlds.
Let's be real for a second. PLSQL is absolutely amazing for anything that involves manipulating huge sets of data. But it can be kind of terrible for other things. You know, like trying to parse a complex string with regex, or trying to use a modern crypto library. Those tasks are just way easier in a language like JavaScript.
So check this out. Up top, we have a totally standard JavaScript module. It's just got a function to validate an email address using a regular expression. Then look down below in the PLSQL block. We are calling that JavaScript function directly, passing it a value and getting a result back, just like it was any other PLSQL function. The integration is just, wow, it's completely seamless. Now, how is this possible? It's thanks to something called the Multilingual Engine, or MLE. It lets you create and store JavaScript modules right inside the database, and then call them from your PL/SQL code. And this is the key takeaway. It finally lets you use the right tool for the right job. Use PLSQL for what it's great at, data, and use JavaScript and its massive ecosystem for everything else. All happening right there inside the database.
Okay, wow, we've covered a lot. We've talked performance, modern data with JSON, zero downtime deployments, and even mixing in other languages. Now, let's take this to the next level. Let's put all these pieces together and see how you can turn your PLSQL backend into an instant modern API.
You know the drill. You write this brilliant, super efficient PLSQL package that does all this amazing business logic. And then the front-end team comes to you and says, hey, we need to call that from our app. And what happens next? You have to go spin up a whole new Node.js or Java server, write a bunch of boilerplate code, all just to create a simple REST API wrapper around the code you already wrote. It's so much extra work.
But what if you could just skip that whole middle tier? I mean, get rid of it completely. Well, look at this. This one single block of code, using something called Oracle REST Data Services, or ORDS, does exactly that. It's basically telling the database, hey, see this payroll package? Turn it into a REST endpoint. And just like that, poof, your front-end developers have a secure HTTPS endpoint they can start posting to. It is literally an instant API. No extra server, no extra code to maintain.
So let's just pull back and look at what we've built. When you combine all these patterns, you've got bulk processing for insane performance, native JSON for modern data, you're pulling in JavaScript with MSLE for complex logic, you're creating instant APIs with ORDS, and you're deploying it all with zero downtime using EBR. You haven't just written a stored procedure. You've basically turned your database into a high-performance modern application server.
Look, we've talked through all these patterns, but seeing is believing, right? True understanding only comes from doing. So here's my challenge to you. Go find an old piece of your own PLSQL code. You know the one. It's got a slow loop, or it's building some awful concatenated string. I want you to rewrite it using bulk collect and then native JSON types. I promise you, once you see the difference in performance and just how clean the code becomes, you will never, ever go back to the old way. So, what do you say? You can accept the challenge?